Hey everyone, Christian Harris here again with another Christian's Conversations with. Today I am joined by Lisa Lively, an experienced brand manager, marketing executive, here to talk about her experience in the job search market today. So, Lisa, nice to meet you.
Yes, thanks for having me on, Chris. Appreciate the invite.
Oh, thank you. So we'll just kind of get down to it. So, tell me a little bit about your career journey and what led you to where you're at today.
Yeah, of course. So I am based out of Fargo, North Dakota. I was born and raised here. And when I kind of started my career out in general, I started in an area that is not even close related to what I ended my last position in. I worked in the automotive industry for about 6.5 years. I was just a really lucky person that had a good connection that worked at the dealership at the time. And so I walked in, I got hired on the spot and decided to just, give it a shot. I'm a Midwest girl, so I grew up with, trucks and cars and motorcycles and all that good jazz. So it definitely wasn't something that I was scared of going into or anything along those lines. So I met a lot of different people, a lot of really cool people, and I helped but create a business development center. And this was like way back when in the dealerships, probably about like 10, 12 years ago, when business development centers were finally starting to become a thing in dealerships. I feel like on the south side of the country, East, West Coast, they had been really popular. And in the Midwest, they were starting to become more common just to have some sort of liaison between the service department and the customers because those phones never stopped ringing. So it was me and two other girls. We started that department, and I kind of just was like I would say weaseled my way into the service department and started writing service. And I did that for quite a few years until I had my daughter. I have a 6-year-old. So at the time she was about 6 months old when I came back from maternity leave. And I think I took a really good look at what I wanted to do with my career. I think when people bring kids into the world, they start to think about generational impact and influence and legacy, all those things. And so I made a really big switch. I went from being a service writer, dealing with all these chaotic people 24/7, working long hours, to being a cold caller at a SaaS company. And the SaaS company that I worked with was local here to the Midwest. It's called Connect Booster. Since then, they've actually been acquired. But so I took a really big and scary pay cut. I took about a $38,000 pay cut to switch industries. And, I look back at it now and it was scary. It's very, very scary. I don't know if you've ever done anything like that in your career, Chris, but it's no easy decision to decide to leave an industry. It's no easy decision to take a pay cut. And I look back at it now and I'm obviously very happy that I did it because I got into the technology sector of the world as far as different industries go. I know that you were at Verizon, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been doing technology since I really graduated college since
hmm
96. But yeah, I was at Verizon for the last 18 years as a
Yeah.
solutions architect. So that's
Yeah.
all I did.
Yeah. Technology. Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
a great industry. Like I really liked the industry. I liked the model of SaaS. I didn't go to college. I think I started for about a few weeks, and that's when I had started getting into the service writer industry. And I was like, wow, I really like this. So I dove, head first. And I think I look at like the overall different types of things that I even did when I worked for Connect Booster and B&G, the team that was here in the Fargo Moorhead area. And I somehow migrated from cold calling to credit card processing. And I did that for a few months. And I remember everyone telling me how it's such a difficult industry and it's hard to understand. And it's going to take me 6 months to train and figure it out. And I jumped in. It was about like a week or two later. Shout out to my mentor at the time. His name was Rob. He was a fantastic teacher to help me understand it. And the one thing that I really liked about working at the dealership was that you get to a point where you're explaining something to someone that they don't understand. So they're looking at a situation confused. They are unfamiliar, at least most people, not all, but they're trying to justify making a decision on the amount of knowledge that they have. So walking into a customer service role where I was explaining something that they didn't understand, but being able to remove the jargon and put it in blatant terms where they could really understand it, really consume it and be able to make a very educated decision. And that's what I really loved about credit card processing, was that when you're trying to explain something that is super confusing and has a ton of different components to it, to someone where they can actually walk away with a good understanding, was extremely, what's the word for it? Just like good faith feeling. Like I felt like what I was doing had a really good purpose and had meaning, and I was helping people. And so I loved it, but I wouldn't say I got bored, but I think I was running out of things to do. They had created the position that I had moved into, and I don't think that everything in the position per se was going to keep me busy for 40 hours a week. And I was approached by a previous employee that also had worked at B&G for a position at a technology firm. And so the firm was Reach Out Technology, and Reach Out is a managed IT services provider. And kind of how we got connected there is Connect Booster is a SaaS software that services and markets to the managed IT services industry. So it was a pretty easy transition when I started working for them, because I already had an idea of, what an MSP is for their their jargon of their industry, a managed IT services provider. And so when I transitioned over, I looked at everything that they wanted to do, and I loved trade shows. It was one of my favorite things that I did when I worked for B&G, and I loved to travel. So I kind of had like a little bit of everything within the position. So as I just kind of grew into the director of partnerships and special projects as a small company, I witnessed them kind of go through just so much growth. They became, when I first started, they did a mini IPO. And then by the time that I had left, they had reverse merged and bid inside of Youngling's ice cream company for probably about a year and a half at that point in time. So I witnessed a lot of growth, a lot of transitions as, companies were acquired, because I did. And so I kind of sat in the area where I was, how my boss used to say, I was a utility player. So I was just kind of moved in the areas that I needed to be placed. When you think of a small company, even though a publicly traded company, there's a lot of people that wear a multitude of hats. And basically everybody did. Everybody had the same goal as the CEO, as the board members. Were very mission focused on everything that needed to get done within the position and within the company. So it taught me a lot. But I think one thing that I see now that I'm in the job search is, when you're a person that wears multiple hats and you're doing multiple different things, you become a Jill of all trades and a master of none. So I worked in a ton of different areas, and I was very beneficial and useful in Reach Out. But I look now at the overall condition of the market, and my resume looks a little bit crazy, because I did a little bit here, I did a little bit there. And I think that's been my biggest struggle in this market now, is looking at past 10, 12 years in my resume, and it's a little bit of everything. And I think especially with applying through a system that gets searched through AI first, it's hard to look at my resume and see that I'm capable of learning new things and managing multiple projects and multiple different departments. But you don't see that until you maybe have a conversation with me or really understand my growth. And it's hard to put pen to paper on a resume without making it 6 pages long of trying to explain what I've done. So I think condensing it it's been a little bit difficult to try explain. I feel like I've probably created a couple different resumes trying to get that pinned down specifically.
Yeah, and I agree. And just based on your answer, and I have some of these questions already written down, but it's like, okay, here's another question. Here's another question.
Yeah.
Because I think what you're describing is similar to someone that's kind of been in technology. You have to be a jack of all trades. You're not just doing one thing, because the great thing about that industry is it's ever changing. What we're doing today changes maybe not a month from now, but pretty close. By the second, third quarter of that year, there's a new focus. You still have to complete what you've already started, but you have to do that. And like you mentioned, it's hard to put that on a piece of paper.
Yeah, it's really hard. And like, as you just pointed out, like things do change, from month to month and quarter to quarter. And, you can be super thankful that AI exists, but AI does change a lot of things. And also just the state of, where the world is too, how people have opinions on things or view things or are making decisions on their businesses is really based off of, everything that, the United States government is doing, what states are doing, how people are viewing specific things now compared to how they looked at them 5 years ago. And I feel like that's changing too. So it's an interesting industry regardless of the industry, whether it be technology or whether it be an accounting firm or retail. Every industry is going through some major changes. It's not just technology, in my opinion.
No, I agree. So during the process, like where you started, and for someone like myself, like I haven't had to look for a job for 18 years,
Mhm, mhm,
which is a good thing. So, but everything is all different. Before I used to go down to, convention and you'd go and I'd just get interviewed. Hundreds of people would
mhm.
show up, you'd sit down, you get interviewed. If it went well, you moved on and so on. Everything primarily done online now. So, how have you changed or what tools have you been using since you started that have been helpful, or what have you changed that's kind of made it better?
I would, I think that for as far as tool wise goes, I have a friend down in Illinois, her name's Julie, and she had recommended me to look at JobScan. And JobScan is a great AI tool that will scan your resume compared to a job description posting to compare it for the ATS system. So is it actually, pulling a good percentage on exactly what they're looking for? And it's not that I would encourage anyone to do that and lie on their resume, because if you lie on your resume, you're going to find out that you lied on your resume. Word your answers so that they do match up in the most truthful statements. JobScan has probably been my favorite tool so far, but if anyone's not using that and ChatGPT, there are probably some things that could be improved there. And I think it's really important too, when you're looking at ChatGPT, is to really educate Chat on what your tone of voice is. You don't want to sound generic. And it's not that you should take word for word what Chat is writing for you, but really take a good example of how it's outlining it and how it's building it. And, take some key words, some key phrases, and apply it in a way that makes sense and sounds like you. Because if you sound like everyone else using AI and everyone else creating an entire outline or an entire resume based off of what Chat makes for them, you're going to see it. And I think everybody that has kind of lived and breathed AI, even in the past year or two, or have used it to write anything, M dashes are probably a really key giveaway that something is written by AI. And there are also some really great tools out there like Zero GPT to scan something to see what it looks like. And it's, as far as if it's 100% AI written, 50% AI written, 30% AI written, and it's never going to be, 100% zero, because it's going off of grammar. So if you have proper grammar, it's going to get triggered at some point in time. There's going to be a little bit of AI detection in there, but just make sure you sound authentically when you're using all these tools, because it's really easy to sound like everyone else that's in the same pool. And when you're in the pool of applicants, you don't want to blend in. You want to stick out. So just be careful using those tools for sure.
You mentioned M dashes. What is it? What is that for people that don't know what that is, do you think?
Dash is, think of like a hyphen, but an extended hyphen. So in grammar, it is used properly in multiple different senses. But if you think of, you and I having a conversation via text message or via LinkedIn or email or anything along those lines, when you see an M dash, you're either going to think you're talking to an English professor or someone that has went to school and, decided to be a copywriter and wants to write copy the correct way. Now on a website or something along those lines, a very, very proper place to have an M dash. But same thing with LinkedIn. LinkedIn will look for AI generated content and kind of push it down into the algorithm. So another thing to be very careful about, especially as you're trying to, attract people to your profile, click and see what you're into and what industry and what your skill set is. And recruiters will look at it too. And I believe probably most recruiters can probably see what's AI written and what's not pretty easily, especially based off an M dash. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen that kind of come up on a few different posts lately. So I'm sure it's been around for quite some time, but it's getting more and more brought up.
Mhm.
The hard part with the AI for most people, I think, is, we know we have to use it at some level, but like you said, it's getting that right mix. Because, like you said, if you sound like 10 people, they're only going to, whether the first person usually end price, the person they're going to look at. So you have to still make yourself sound different, but you still have to hit those keywords that they're looking for.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Keywords are really important just to make yourself stick out and, pass those AI scanners, because it's difficult. And I know there's a few things that will kind of get you past like a scanner. There's some positions that will ask if you want to opt out of that. And I think that is a great option, especially if you don't have a very solid industry background as far as what you've been doing. So like a technician or a software engineer or developer, you have some pretty key components that are going to be transferable no matter what. But people that are in positions like me that, wore many hats or did a little bit of marketing here and there, did some branding, rewriting, site building, event management, like there are so many different things that are not going to every single position for either an event manager or a marketing specialist or a marketing manager or a brand director or partnership director. They're not always gonna line up perfectly to get past that AI scan.
You mentioned one of your posts that during the job search, reaching out to your network is so important. Why do you think that is?
I think that our network is usually our biggest cheerleaders. I'm definitely a big fan of never, don't burn your bridges. Don't ever burn a bridge. Stay in touch with people. Don't give them cold shoulders once you leave to a different place. And don't be scared to reach out and ask for help, I think is really, really important too. I think something that I noticed when I was looking at a new position and looking at all the different positions that are out there, and I look at how I received a few of my other jobs in the past, it's always been word of mouth. It's always been getting connected to someone in a way where it's an introduction versus just applying for a position. So, definitely take advantage of recruiters too, aside from just your network as well. Because when you have a good relationship with someone that can be a connecting piece between you and a position that you'd be interested in, whether or not that position is posted, you never really know until you say, oh, yep, you talked to, let's say Bob, for example, you talk to Bob and Bob's listening to you on how you are searching for something and, what you're looking for. And if that person's a very interconnected person to their network as well, they might know of something. You never know. Having that conversation of what you're looking for, you're going to kind of keep it in the back of your mind when you're the person listening to that person that's looking for a position. Because when you build really, really good relationships with people, they always want to go bat for you when the time comes. And there are so many different opportunities as far as networking groups, whether it be remotely or in person. Obviously, I'm in a smaller town. I think people probably think Fargo is like 20,000 people, but I think combined with all the little suburbs, I think we're probably around 200 and some thousand plus. So it's a big small town. There's networking groups that I've been taking advantage of, and I would advise that to anybody listening that are looking for, a way to find those jobs that aren't posted. And reach out to a recruiter, join the networking groups, and talk to your existing network. There are so many different ways to also just branch out as far as who you know, because I have always been a firm believer it's more about who you know than what you know. You can always teach yourself something or learn something from someone. So I've noticed that, especially coming from a network where I networked with people across the US and haven't been networking with people locally, I've put a really big focus on networking with people locally and expanding that network there. And I think that anyone has an existing network, they probably just think it's smaller than it really is. Because most people have had a few jobs in their life where they can reach back and tap into, an old boss or an old colleague or an old direct report or anything along those lines, ask for a recommendation or anything to kind of move you in the right direction.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think if you've done a good job, like you said, don't burn bridges. That's the one thing when
Yeah.
you're younger, sometimes you don't realize how important that relationship could be. Maybe not today, but it could be 10 years from now. They could be, below you possibly. And then if you treated them badly, then there's somebody's boss somewhere. And when you need something, that can bite you in the butt, as they say. So I think that's important to learn, especially as you're younger, that you do that. And then when somebody does reach out for something simple, it's replying back, acknowledging it. Because that's key. I've reached out to a handful of people. I've probably not talked to you, in 5, 6 years,
Mhm.
but they've responded and, we've had conversations and they've done what they can, which is all you can ask for, right?
Mhm.
I mean, ultimately it's on us if we can get in front of the key is to get in front of the people you need to talk to in the first place. But at least
And
they can put you in the
definitely,
right direction.
yeah, and definitely go into the conversation. Obviously it's a hard conversation to have because you're walking into it being pretty selfish per se. But go in open-minded, listen to what their life is looking like right now. Can you help them with something? Do they need to get connected with someone? But the local networking group that I'm in, the way that Brian had set it up, he did a very, very great job. You walk in and everybody goes around and they give their ask of what they're looking for. And everybody's taking notes, writing down what they need so that when the time comes, they can approach them and say, hey, I heard you're looking for an experienced plumber and you have a remodeling business and you need someone to do a job on, X, Y, and Z properties of yours. I've used this plumber for 10 years. He has a great reputation. Or, I went to high school with someone and they have a really successful business. So I can at least get you in touch. Because even walking into that type of scenario where you're going in to have the conversation to not just, I need your help, please help me first, but going in there to be helpful as well will really set you up for success when you're reaching out to your network, because people are going through stuff or are in need of something and they just might not have asked for it, or they might not have posted about it, or even thought that they needed it until you really spark a good conversation.
Yeah, and one thing you learn from talking to people is people want to help. I mean, that's the great thing about having a good network. Everyone wants to help each other as best as they can, and in return, you help, like you said, help them whenever they may need something that could be work related, personal, however you can help, or just listen. I mean, that's half the battle too.
Yeah, because sometimes people just need an ear lent to them for a moment, and it's important to be able to listen when that time comes.
With the various roles you've had in the various companies you work for, what's the one leadership quality you look for from a great leader?
Oh gosh, I would probably say if anyone's listening that has seen the trend and the joke about the millennial manager, the one that responds with, just take care of yourself first. I know that you'll get your stuff done. And an interview I actually had at the beginning of this week, I had this exact same conversation, because that's how I managed people. Don't come to me with, oh, I need this, I'm so sorry. Like, I want people to take care of themselves, because I know when people take care of themselves, they can show up their best quality at work. And that's how I've been managed the last few years. I mean, I was very lucky to work directly with the CEO of my in my previous role. And, at the end of the day, being valued that, I am a person, I'm a human being. I have a daughter, and there are some things in life that you really just can't control. And knowing that at the end of the day, I'm going to get my stuff done and I'm going to get my work done is what I see and what I look for in a manager. And that's what I hope everyone would look for, because I think maybe the mindset of grinding and grinding and grinding is kind of starting to dial back as far as working through, your kids' soccer game, or, skipping out on swimming lessons, or skipping out getting lunch with a friend because you're too nervous to take that extra 15 minutes on your lunch break. I think having a relationship like that with a manager, knowing that they know that you're going to get your stuff done and having that trust, is really, really important. So I definitely look for that in new managers and companies in general that have that value of, we want you to get your stuff done, get it done, and that's what we care about.
Do you think that kind of manager comes from the top in a sense? Because if the top's more like the traditional, which is, hey, we have a deadline, you get it done,
Mhm.
that's all you should be focused on, they're going to kind of be that way. Whereas if everyone just understands, hey, we're all adults here,
Mhm.
you know what you need to do, get it done. That's all that should matter in a sense. But I don't
Yep.
think everybody thinks that way, like you said.
No, I don't think everybody does, unfortunately, but I do think it comes from the top down. I think company culture really comes from the executive office, and it just kind of filters down. And I think when you look at company culture, a lot of it comes down to communication. How are you guys communicating with your people? What are communications looking like between projects, between meetings? I'm also a big believer that, if it could have been an email, it should have been an email. And there's a lot of great tools like Slack and Teams that exist now, or even Google Chat, where when there's projects that need to be collectively worked on, instead of sitting on a meeting for 45 minutes, send your updates and go from there. If you need help, ask for help. I think a lot of people get into a position and then they're scared to ask for help. So I think that's a big thing too. So really laying out the foundation from the top down and explaining that even from day one for a person is really important. Yeah.
Communication, like you said, letting everybody know where they stand and what the expectations are. But like you said, coming from working for companies in the past where meetings were initially like we had a meeting for everything, and then we kind of took advantage of the tools towards the end, like, hey, we have these tools, let's use them. I think that was one of the positives from the COVID experience in a sense. Well, now we had to use the technology because you couldn't, we were in the office every day of the week. That there really weren't exceptions unless you had customer meetings. And then we went from, okay, hey, we can work remote as long as you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And there were, like anything, people that weren't, but the majority were. And we adjusted and we did take advantage of those tools, which was awesome to have collaboration tools available at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And there's a lot of really awesome tools out there too, like Monday.com or Trello that can make a collaborative area to say put your sticky notes somewhere as far as updates and tracking where something's at in the progress bar per se. I think stuff like that is really important too, and a lot of tools like that are not taken advantage of. And I know there's a ton of different ones, even with inside of Google. And I'm sure Microsoft has them too, but even inside of Google, you can have some sort of project management tracking system. And I get it. A lot of people look at tools and they think, oh my gosh, that's going to be, $300 a month for a subscription. And then I need 6 people to have a license and oh, it's going to add up really fast. I mean, look at a shared spreadsheet. You can build a tracking system, through Google. It can be that simple. I think a lot of people just need to have the direction to go through. But yeah, I think it's powerful when we have all these tools now that we didn't have 10 years ago, even 5 years ago.
So partner management, that's big today. Like I see that almost at every company has that type of role, whatever that may
Mhm.
look like. For you, what makes a good partner manager?
I would say someone that is really good at building rapport very easily, someone that can get placed in a room, whether it be on a Zoom call or in a physical presence or a very large conference. And it's almost like throwing down your chess pieces and knowing that they're going to do what they need to do without having to control them. And so I think finding someone that is very personality driven and is not afraid to have conversations, have hard conversations, easy conversations, anything in between. Having someone that's so relationship focused and knowing that it's as simple as if you say you're going to follow up, follow up. And especially in, say, even vendor management, which I worked with a lot of vendors in my previous role. And something that I kind of took from a previous VP at the company was just a Google sheet, as a Google document. I had my Monday notes, my Tuesday notes. I wrote everything that I needed to do as far as an action item. And I took religious notes because I think that's really important, even like in a conversation, especially over Zoom. I've been remote for 4 years. So, writing down exactly what they're saying, what their expectations are, who you're talking to, what their role is, what their personality's like. If they said they have, 6 kids and they live out in the middle of nowhere and they're working remotely, remember those things because when you get back on a call and you start talking to them about the project that you're working on and be like, okay, well, how's your 6 children and your 3 cats doing? I remember you were getting off because you were going to vacation, you're going to Hawaii. Like, how did your trip go? And it's not something that everybody can do. And there's a lot of people, I think, that try to force those fake conversations and try to build fake rapport. But as long as you're genuinely interested in hearing what that person has to say, it's really easy to build rapport with almost anyone you talk to. So I think that's what's probably the best and most important quality in anyone that has to do with anything with partnerships or relationships. And that's more than just someone dedicated to partnerships. That's in any role.
And I agree. I think it is more of a trait you have, because the one thing I've worked with plenty of vendors that I was in my role, basically, in a sense, if you wanted to talk to our teams, you kind of went through me. So I would have all the vendors wanting to come in and talk to our reps and,
Mhm.
like anything, pitch their products. And the funny thing, it's kind of like the people in the technology industry is those roles kind of turn over fairly quickly in some industries. But you'd always see the same people. I've worked with certain vendors with like 4 different companies during my time frame at Verizon, but they were always great no matter who they worked for, and it didn't matter the product. They had that relationship with us. So, if said rep needed something, they knew they could call me, hey, can I get in front of your team? So absolutely, because I knew they would
Mhm.
do what they needed to do, knew their stuff, and it was good for my team. And, you'd see that over and over. So I said that I think those are key traits to that role. And I don't think you can be taught. I think it's just something you can do. It's kind of like sales in a sense. I can teach you everything about the product, but you got to be able to sell it. And
You have
some
to be able to
people,
market yourself and market your
yeah,
personality. So Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Chris.
You mentioned on one of your posts, which I think is great. You have to travel. Like you did a lot of trade shows. So you traveled probably all
Mhm,
over the country, maybe all over the world. And you thought it was important to kind of go check out like the local scene when you would go
mhm,
there. Why was that like? And sometimes I know you're probably there only a couple of days. Why do you think that's important to do when you travel for business?
mhm. I think any opportunity to understand a culture outside of your own, and I think a lot of people don't realize or talk about how large the United States is. The United States is huge. Me, way up in Fargo, North Dakota, being employed by a company that was in Illinois, it is such a culture difference even between the two, between Chicago and Fargo. Massive difference. So when I'm going down to areas, whether it be Florida or Vegas or even New York and New Jersey are definitely an animal alone, but it's a complete different world. And so really absorbing how those people do business, how those people talk, will make you more versatile, especially when you are going to different places. And I also think if you're not taking advantage of having the opportunity and being lucky enough to be employed by a company that pays for your travel, you need to enjoy it. Like, enjoy the things because life is way too short. Like, life is just way, way too short. And so, when I would travel down to Vegas, there's so many different things to just go out and experience, and different foods to eat, different coffee shops, meeting with people at conferences coming from tons of different areas of the country and then coming to a centralized location and listening to what it's like to live in their specific area is always something that I will never ever take for granted because you learn so much about other areas of just the United States that you're not familiar with.
For business travels, do you have a place or a city that every time you got to go, you loved going there, looked forward to it?
I would probably say I really liked Illinois. I love Chicago because I think Chicago has a very community vibe, but not at the same time. And there's so much going on. But it was really on the south side too. Like I really liked the areas like Rosemont and Schaumburg, where it kind of feels like a big small city, but it's just right outside of the big city. But I think I'd have to say Orlando. I loved Orlando. I loved going to Florida every time I went. There was a Marriott that I always stayed at. And so going down there, I knew I was going to order their lobster bisque every time I went to the restaurant because I've had it so many times and I'm like, okay, well now I need to like get my own body down there somehow so I can, just so I can have the lobster bisque because I know how good it is. So finding those like really good restaurants that you are, have the opportunity to go to over and over again is my favorite. Because I used to go down to the ClickFunnels conferences that were down in Orlando over the past few years. So I always took advantage of being able to stay at the Marriott.
Yeah. That's the one thing that, like, because in my roles, I really haven't had to travel for business. Way back when I
Mhm,
worked for AT&T, I did. We would go up to Washington a lot, but that's about it. So I get asked a lot for the new positions because there is traveling involved. And they're like,
mhm.
"Are you willing to travel?" And I'm like, absolutely. I have older kids or in college or
Yeah,
out of college. I don't really, little kids make it a little difficult. And I haven't had to
it
do it.
does.
I could see why people do get tired of it because you're always on a plane. But that
Mhm,
does excite me. Like I said, the US is so big. I've been to the main places, or I consider the main
mhm,
places, but to see small towns, those are
mhm,
always interesting when we just travel personally. So I'm
mhm.
looking forward to the opportunity to kind of do what you did in the past. And like I said, see the city, not just a conference
Yeah.
room.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's a good op.
Recently, you started your own business, Lively Branding and Consulting. Was that something you've always wanted to do or something you needed to do kind of while you were doing this?
Mhm. I mean, I definitely wanted the opportunity to work with some more local businesses. I kind of knew back in like the middle to tail end of 2024 that there was an untapped opportunity that was just kind of at the tips of my fingers and I definitely didn't create it to for it to be my end goal or for it to be my top priority or anything along those lines, but I wanted to be able to kind of build out my own relationships that were tied more towards myself than a company that employed me. So I think that when I decided to launch the business, I knew that I might have a client like once every 6 months or once every few months, but I didn't take it on to work with 6 people a month and drown myself in work or anything along those lines. I just wanted to have some sort of legal way to be able to help people and do something that I really enjoyed. And that is sitting there and listening to all the crazy ideas people have for their businesses and, looking at it very logically and be able to give the advice that I needed to give or just kind of help them guide through decisions or really help speak through their own voice. Because I think there's a lot of great marketing companies out there, a lot of great marketing agencies, but not all of them are branding or messaging specialists. And I really enjoyed that out of probably everything that I've done is copywriting and brand messaging. Because being able to sound very authentic, I think, is really important, especially in today's world with AI and social media and everything. Everyone gets an invite for a new newsletter every probably couple days on LinkedIn. So there's a lot of ones to read. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
yes. Once you follow, yes, and most of them are great. It's like everything else. You have to figure out which ones are kind of best for you,
Yeah.
and
I
kind of
agree.
go from that. Do you like being your own boss? I know it's like I said, a passion project, so it's not something that's your main focus because we're still looking for other things. But do you like being your own boss? Because that's a little different for people as well.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't mind it. I feel like I've always had pretty decent time management skills, and as far as just having the brain power to write things down and use that as my like own sounding board to like look over my own notes. But I think at the end of the day, I see myself fitting best with a company that is like a startup maybe or a very small or lean because can't say that I have one specific passion that I would go and launch my own business for and dive, completely head deep in. But being able to be a Jill of all trades for someone that needs it to support a business that's growing. I think when I've like looked at positions and looked at jobs, over the past few weeks, I've really looked at nonprofits, technology startups, a few other ones in between if they've caught my eye here and there. But finding a company where I can really stand behind their mission and take on a lot. I definitely like living and breathing in chaos. So to not have that, I feel like I would get bored.
Yeah.
And, being my own boss would be great, but at the end of the day, I haven't had anything specifically call out to me yet, like, oh yeah, you need to do this full time and be your own boss.
I know that everyone says looking for a job becomes a full-time job, which I completely understand. What do you do to kind of take a step back and realize there's other things you need to do as well, like to give yourself a break? What are things you do for that?
Yeah. Well, I definitely went into being unemployed thinking, okay, there's no way that I'm going to get, sitting here being unemployed, sleeping until noon every day. Definitely not, I'm not going to do that. But, building that routine, I've definitely spent a lot more time. I have the opportunity to go to the gym at like 10 o'clock in the morning. Like, when am I ever going to have that opportunity again? So, I mean, taking advantage of just being able to, do that. Or, my parents are retired, going and stop by and see my parents on the days that I'm not having things planned back to back, picking up my daughter early from school, spending some time outside. This is probably the best time of the year to be unemployed because it's not super hot yet, but being able to just enjoy being outside to have like a little battery recharge almost is nice. But to kind of bounce back off like my network and building out my network, I drink a lot of coffee because I go to meet a lot of people for coffee. And so I think I've been extremely caffeinated over the past few weeks because I want to have every conversation possible. And I'm not ready to kind of like throw out every opportunity as far as an industry to join or a new career path or anything along those lines either. So I think it's been, a great opportunity to book myself as much as I can, to talk to people, to meet with people, whether it be over Zoom or a phone call or in person, getting lunch or grabbing a cup of coffee and learning about what they're doing. And if they can find someone in your network too, to get you connected to, I mean, it's just kind of an overall, it's been a good reset. The only other time I've had off was maternity leave and I had a baby screaming at me for 3 months. Like, most people don't get this time off. They're usually like laid up, they have surgery or, they going through something that makes them, stay low and not be able to do anything they want. So I've definitely taken advantage of having this time because I've never had time like this before in my life.
Yeah, I agree. You do have to take advantage of it. The scary part, I think, for a lot of people when they start this process, whether it be by choice or, unfortunately things happen where they get laid off, is you don't expect it to take as long as it may take. A lot of this is timing. I mean, realistically, it's who you know and this the timing of it. I mean, you do the other things to put yourself in the best position when those things do happen. And I'm reading, I think it says 18 to 24 months now, like on average, for people to find a job that they, I'll say, truly want. Or, I mean, we all could
Mhm.
find jobs in a sense,
Mhm.
but we want to make sure it's the right fit, obviously pay, whatever the case may be. But
Mhm.
18 to 24 months, I don't think people no, I wasn't expecting that. And I took a package in September, took the holidays off because I know B2B, no one's hiring during the holidays, even if they have job
Yeah.
postings. I mean, there's no point. I mean, I can apply. I just know no one's going to. So might as well wait till after the first of the year. So I just started in January. So it's only, I mean, it's been 5 months, but it's it was definitely an eye-opening experience because it has changed so much,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I'm still learning.
Yeah. I thought going into it, I was like, okay, well, I'll find a job in like a week or two and I'll get started. And it's a very fast reality check when I'd apply. And it's like, oh, we went on with another candidate. And I'm like, I applied yesterday. You already looked at my resume? And having just the kind of conversations with other people that have been, searching for a year and a half, I definitely was not expecting it. I knew it was a hard market and I knew it was going to not be the easiest path to find a new role and a new career, but I was not expecting it to be what it is right now because there will be positions and it looks like everyone's hiring, but so many people are unemployed. So raises some red flags.
Yeah, those are all the things people like. Like people say they're reposting positions and like you've applied for the once or twice and you're like, I've not even received anything, but yet it's getting reposted. I mean, so there's lots of things I didn't, depending on who you talk to, what you read, it's like, are these legitimate job opportunities, whatever the case may be. And I think that's why building out that network is important. Because if you can get a hold of the right person, that's really truly what is great sometimes about LinkedIn is one, they'll list who the hiring manager is. So great, start a conversation with them or find out somebody that's in their connections and see if they can put you in touch. But yeah, it's definitely different than I think most people are expecting. But it said, if you take advantage of it as much as you can, whether it be expanding your network, learning new things, whatever that may be, whether it be a course off of LinkedIn, Google, or just reading new articles to keep up to date, then it can be time well spent. I mean, because otherwise you do kind of go insane. And, we've both
Yeah.
read those things when you read the sad stories, which I understand how people can get that way. And, all we can do as a community, in a sense, is try to help them as much as you can, if you know them.
I
That's the
agree.
hardest, one of the hardest things there. If you had a piece of advice for someone looking for a similar path, like in project, or excuse me, partner management, what would it be?
Yeah. I would say as long as you have the personality to have conversations with multiple people and build relationships. I looked at partnerships at my previous role. It was not only for the MSP side of the business, the cybersecurity side of the business, but I worked, directly with the CEO and, I booked him on stages and podcasts and made connections that way as well. So I think really understanding what type of partnerships that the company that you're looking at is looking for. So having a really good understanding of what type of conversations are going to be held, how they're going to be held to make sure that that fits in your personality. Because some people are great over Zoom and some people are great with phone calls and some people are really good in person. And to find someone that does all three very, very well is probably a little bit different. So I think if you like talking to people, if you like building relationships, if you like connecting, if you like building on to something that's already existing, whether it be coming in on a position that somebody was in for a really long time and having to take over their accounts or something along those lines as far as connections go, I think as long as you feel that you have the personality and you know that you have the personality, if you go into the interview extremely nervous, that's how they're going to view you going into partners and partnerships and communications and events and anything along those lines. They're going to see they're going to see someone very, very nervous, someone that, might be sweating a little bit, a little uncomfortable. And if that's how you're walking into an interview, I think maybe taking some good coaching on public speaking or something along those lines to kind of understand how you can calm yourself down so you don't get too nervous or too fretty. I think, me 10 years ago, I was a lot more nervous than I was. But as I've grown up, as I've matured, as I've built a career on building relationships too, I think that I really learned to just listen to people. And when I started listening and I could be an active listener as I'm talking, I think I became a lot better of a person and a better person to be put in charge of partnerships to begin with. So if you are in that area and you need help, definitely find the courses that are available. I'm sure there's a ton of different resources just on YouTube alone that can make you feel a little bit more comfortable in those situations. And once you can master that, you'll be pretty unstoppable.
That's great. It's great advice. I think the more you talk to people in general, the better you get at it. Like you said, 10 years ago, where everyone was different. It's the confidence. It's understanding that if you're getting able to talk to people, regardless of what it is, there's a reason for that. You don't want to be too overconfident, but you want to, you have to realize, hey, I'm Christian. I'm here for this reason. Let me explain to you why that should be, whether it be for an interview or, pitching a product or whatever the case is. And that truly is important. I think the interview part is hard for people because you're up for something against other people. If it's just a conversation, if I'm just talking to you, it's easy to explain to somebody why they should do something or why you'd be a great candidate. I've had plenty of those where you get a chance to, through connections, talk to those people. They love you. And then they're like, okay, well, now I need you to talk to HR. Whole different thing. Then you go back to that SMART
Story.
process. Yeah, where you get the traditional questions. Tell me about a time when you did this. But
Yeah.
that's what they have to do.
I agree. Because it's good to be able to hear kind of like what comes top of mind of an applicant. I did hiring at Reach Out for a cold calling team probably a while ago now, but I remember having those conversations, and I think one of my favorite questions were, asking, okay, what was the last book you read? What was the last podcast you listened to? Like, what did you take away from it? Or, what's your favorite book and why? Tell me about it. Should I read it? Should I not read it? So having those type of questions too in an interview really gives you an idea of who that person is overall, especially when you're looking at a position that's like sales or relationships or even account management. I think kind of seeing how that personality comes out, that's what I looked for as far as looking at cold callers. I wanted someone that, didn't just talk the talk, but was comfortable to talk to. And you could tell that they were comfortable to talk to you because, and especially in the sales world, that's really, really important.
Yeah, those are always fun when we do interviews in the sales positions because you put them through different scenarios just to see. Lisa, I appreciate taking the time today. I think you gave some great information and hopefully will be helpful for other people to listen to this. Obviously, I wish you the best of luck in your journey.
Thank you. Thank you.
I
Appreciate
know
it.
we're all kind of I'm talking to are going through this, and it, like I said, tough market. But I think in the long haul, everything's going to work out for everyone. But it may take a little longer than we'd like. But once again, appreciate the time. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes, you too, and vice versa. Best of luck on your journey too. We're all in the same boat.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.